Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. HTM here, and in this video you're checking out an updated Magicka Warden build for the Deadlands DLC and beyond, and this is pretty ridiculous. With just one skill, we have an insane amount of AoE damage and sustain, making this the perfect setup for grinding XP, grinding champion points, farming gold, and simply just killing as many enemies as possible as quickly as possible. With this update, this build is now stronger than ever, and we'll show you everything you need to make it work, starting right now. Alright everybody, we are back on the Magicka Warden with an updated build for the Deadlands DLC. Of course, this is going to be our easy mode, one skill Magicka Warden Grind God. Set up the Ice Storm build, back and better than ever for this patch, I think. So if you need to grind some XP, this is a very fun and effective way to do it. But let's go ahead and jump into the buff stats on this build. Checking out our character sheet, and about 34k max magickas, 26k max health, 12k max stamina. Magicka recovery about 1000. You can definitely change that up with your food though. Spell damage 4600. That'll be closer to about 5000 when you're fully buffed with your glyph. And then we have 66% spell critical, and then some decent spell penetration and resistances. Now keep in mind, this is just a simple grinding setup. We've tried to make this as easy as possible. I will have a link in the description to a 2-bar setup, which has a little bit more damage and versatility if you need that. So just keep that in mind. In terms of the attribute points, 64 points into max magicka, I think makes sense since we are the Magicka Warden. And then we are using blue food. I would recommend the max health, max magicka food. Of course, you can also use something with a little bit more recovery if you would like, especially if you're going to do group content or maybe bosses or something like that. Some extra magicka recovery would be good, but for just grinding solo XP, basic blue food, totally fine. Of course, we are running the Thief Mundus for the extra critical chance here. This is very good, performs very well on this build. Then we have passive, Minor Berserk, Major Prophecy. We'll talk about where we get these from in just a minute. In terms of consumables, you really don't need anything. I mean, if you do want to use a potion, basic magicka potions are completely fine on this build. It has very few issues with sustain. And then in terms of the race, I think there's a couple of good options here. Currently, I'm using the High Elf, and the High Elf is going to give you a good bit of max magicka plus spell damage. It's going to be good for killing enemies as fast as possible, right? Now, you can also use Khajiit. I think that's a very good option. Dark Elf. Those would probably be my top 3. But this build is very powerful and flexible, so basically anything can work if you would like it to. I think that covers all the basics. Let's go ahead and talk about the gear setup next. Now, this has changed a little bit. Remember, I'm just going to show you the 1-bar setup for now. But I am still using Mother Sorrow, and I think this is going to be a great 5-piece set to run because you get the extra critical chance. That does give you max magicka as the 2-piece, and then crit chance for everything else. You can see I'm on the Deadlands PTS right now. This has been updated to be better suited to hybrid builds. It's critical chance now instead of just spell critical. So that's something you might consider, probably not for this set, but for other sets. We'll definitely be talking about that a lot with our updated builds for the Deadlands DLC. But we are running the Ice Staff, and again, that's because we're focusing on ice damage for this build. It synergizes very well with the Magicka Warden skills and passives, plus just a lot of fun to play an Ice Mage. Precise, I think, is the best trait in this case for the extra crit, and then you will want a weapon and spell damage enchant if you're running the 1-bar setup. That just gives us a little bit higher spell damage when we need it. So that's the main weapon. Remember, it is a 2-handed weapon, so it's going to count for 2 pieces. And then we just have our Mother Sorrow jewelry, so necklace and 2 rings. Of course, we got spell damage enchants on here. I went with Infused for this setup. You could definitely run Bloodthirsty as a trait. You could even just keep the Arcane trait. That'll be totally fine as well. Now for our second set, we did switch over to the Frostbite set. So this is from the Blackwood chapter. It's an overland set, and it is specifically for Ice Mages. So I thought it would be really good to test this out on the Ice Storm build, and it does perform well. Very, very good. You get the weapon and spell damage. You can see more crit chance, more spell damage, and then an 8% damage bonus to our Frost abilities. So that's going to affect our main 1 skill spammable. Of course, that's what we want. And then it can go up all the way to about 14% based on status effects that you can apply as a warden. So we have the body pieces here: feet, legs, hands, waist, and the chest. Divines would be your ideal trait if you can pick that up, with Magicka as the enchant on all of those. So that just leaves us with the monster set, and I think you have plenty of options here. For a lot of players, I think Iceheart is going to be very good on this build. Now you do get the 657 critical chance, you do get a free damage shield, plus some bonus frost damage to all enemies for 6 seconds. This will have a very high uptime on this build, by the way, since we have such high critical chance already. I think for the extra damage shield, this set is quite good. We're currently running light. We've got the light helmet and the light shoulders, Max Magicka as the enchant, and Divines as the trait. Now, you honestly don't need it. You don't need a monster set to make this build work. You could run 2 mismatch pieces. You could even run a mythic item and then just move one of your other set pieces around. So plenty of other options for this, and I will have some of those detailed in the written guide as well. Link in the description if you would like to check that out. But that is the basic 1-bar easy setup. Like I said, we've got the Mother, Sorrow, Ice Staff, and Jewelry, the Frostbite set on the body, and then Iceheart for the monster set. Pretty simple. Go ahead and jump over to the skills next, and starting with some passive buffs just to make this build even easier. So we've got Inner Light, of course. This comes from the Mage's Guild skill line. It's your first ability there. You want Inner Light as your morph. This gives you tons of Max Magicka for free, plus the Major Prophecy buff. So that's about 12% spell critical rating for free just by having this slotted. So that's very good. Like I said, you can run trash potions on this build without having to worry about your spell crit, which is a nice option. Next up, we have another passive buff, this time from the Warden class skills. This comes from Animal Companions, and Bird of Prey is your last skill here. This is nice for the extra movement speed, though we have tons of speed on this build already. It's also nice for the Minor Berserk passively, so that's 5% bonus damage done. Plus you get some extra bonus damage from Animal Companions, those passive skills, which we'll look at in just a minute. Third ability here, Arctic Blast, is just a nice heal. This comes from your Winter's Embrace skill line. The third ability here gives you a nice burst heal plus some passive healing over time. Frost damage, and you can stun enemies. If you hit them 3 times with this effect, they are stunned for a pretty long duration, 4 seconds. So this will be good for some larger pulls, or if you're just in an active area, maybe you're with a group or a partner who's pulling for you. This is very nice for the AoE damage and the potential heal if you need it. Keep in mind you can also cast this, multiple times. Every time you recast it, you will get the heal. That brings us to our spammable DPS skill on this build, Unstable Wall of Frost. That is from the Destruction Staff skill line, second ability here. And you do want this morph, okay? If you don't taking the Unstable Wall morph, this build is not going to work like it should be working. The reason why we want Unstable Wall is you can see, let me switch over to my bar. This does frost damage every time the effect ends. You'll also get a free projectile damage shield. That's only going to shield you from ranged attacks, not melee attacks. But what we're really casting this for is the damage. So the way that this works is you'll lay it down on the ground. It'll start doing damage over time, but now you can cast it again, and you can see that explosion effect. That's the extra frost damage. So basically I can spam this, or you can weave light attacks. And that is a lot of AoE damage very, very quickly. It's super effective, which you'll see in the gameplay in just a couple minutes. So yeah, that is our main spammable. Highly recommended. It's a lot of fun to play with and very, very strong. Then we just have one more skill here on the 1-bar setup, and that's going to be Blue Betty. Again, from Animal Companions. This is our Magicka Sustain, a little bit of Magicka Recovery from this, plus Major Sorcery, so 20% spell damage. You can also remove 1 negative effect from yourself. So you want to keep that up 100% of the time if you can. That again is your extra spell damage, extra recovery. You can see we proc some passives from the Warden from this ability as well. So it's really nice. The ultimate here is really up to you. I like summoning the bear pet here, Eternal Guardian. This just does good, basically passive damage. You almost don't have to control it. You don't have to worry about it. Your bear pet is going to kill off any enemies that are remaining after you've spammed your wall a couple of times. So it's pretty much just autopilot. It's an easy ultimate to put on your bar, and you don't have to worry about casting it or aiming it or anything like that. Super easy. Some other options you might consider, of course, from Winter's Embrace. The Northern Storm ultimate is going to give you tons of frost damage in an AoE. plus major protection, plus 15% max magicka for 30 seconds. This is extremely strong. You might want to consider that if you're soloing some more difficult content or bosses or things like that. That would be a great option. Of course, you could also run the Destruction Staff Ultimate, Elemental Rage, with the Ice Staff equipped. It's going to be pretty good as well. So those would be your top 3 options there. I'm going to cut to some gameplay here just so you can see the build in action. This build is ridiculously strong, probably the simplest build you can play in the game. Basically, all you need to do is keep up your Blue Betty, right? So that's the extra spell damage. We'll want to have that up. You can use your Arctic Blast heal whenever you need it. You can also cast that early, like before you go into a group of enemies, just to have that heal over time and that stun effect rolling. And then literally all you need to do is line up your enemies and hit your ice wall 2 times. That's basically it. That's going to do a ton of damage, especially since we have such a high crit chance rating. And usually 1 to 2 walls is all you need to basically destroy a group of enemies. If you're doing DLC content or something like that, you might need 3 or 4 casts. It just depends on what type of area you're in. But you can see the whole entire way the build works is just super easy, very effective for grinding experience, which is what we want on this setup. I did want to talk about the Warden passives a little bit because they are pretty important when it comes to this particular build. So in terms of the Animal Companion passives, you will want all of these, by the way. Bond with Nature, this gives you some healing. This will proc off your Blue Betty anytime you recast that, by the way. Then you have Savage Beast to give you extra ultimate generation. Of course, Flourish for the extra magicka and stamina recovery. And Advanced Species, we talked about that bonus damage done. This is a great reason to have that bear pet slotted. You do get 2% bonus damage for each animal companion ability on your skill bar. Now, green balance, this is interesting. We're not using any of this on the 1-bar setup. You certainly can on a 2-bar setup because you will have room. But the main one you will actually want, even though you're not running any of these skills, that is the Maturation passive. And the reason that you want this is for the Minor Toughness buff, and that is 10% max health for 20 seconds. Notice that the tooltip here says it activates a heal. Notice the tooltip here activating a heal on yourself or an ally. Not a green balance heal, but any heal. So it does proc off things like, you know, your Arctic Blast. You can see I now have that extra health bonus. Pretty good passive. Winter's Embrace, these are good as well. Glacial Presence, this increases your chance of applying Chilled. That applies just to your Arctic Blast, by the way, so that's another good reason to pop this skill before you enter a fight. You can proc that Shield, which of course this does increase damage with the Frostbite set. Frozen Armor gives you some extra physical and spell resistance. Icy Aura, it's not bad for the reduced effectiveness of snares. And then you definitely will want Piercing Cold as soon as possible. 10% bonus frost damage. The magic damage will buff your bear pet, by the way, so we get good bonuses out of both of these. In terms of weapon skills, yes, you will want everything for Destruction Staff. One passive especially you want to unlock as early as possible, and that is this last one, Destruction Expert. When you kill an enemy with the Destruction Staff ability, you restore a whopping 3,600 magicka. That's more than the cost of a unstable wall, and you'll get that magicka back once per enemy. So 3,600 times however many kills you get is insane. That's why you don't need any sustain on this build. You don't need any recovery glyphs. As long as you're killing enemies on this build, you have infinite sustain due to the Destruction Expert passive. It's incredibly strong. Now, light armor is good. You saw in the setup here, I'm doing 7 pieces of light, and that's mostly for these last 2. I mean, Prodigy gives us the extra crit rating, which is what we wanted on this build. And then Concentration gives us a ton of spell penetration. This is a huge boost to damage, especially on a solo build where we're not running Minor Breach or anything like that. So light armor is definitely the way to go on this setup. Now, in terms of guild skills, really we're not running anything that you'd need to worry about on this build. Alliance War, not necessary. Of course, you will want your racial passives, and then Alchemy, you will want medicinal use, because when you use your potions, this will make them last 30% longer. All right, moving on to champion points next, and I've tried to keep this basically as simple as possible. I will, as usual, have multiple versions of this in the written guide if you need it for whatever CP level you are at. We'll have 300, 600, 900, and 1200 CP breakdowns over there. Link is in the description. But this is just my general setup, and of course the craft tree doesn't really change a whole lot. I usually recommend that you start with Steed's Blessing for the extra movement speed. Hop on over to Gilded Fingers for the extra gold gained. Steadfast Enchantment is a nice quality of life CP node here. Your weapon enchantments will last quite a bit longer when you have that active. And then, of course, Treasure Hunter to increase the quality of loot that you get in treasure chests. Rationer does increase the duration of your food that you have active. And then Liquid Efficiency gives you a chance not to consume a potion. So those are kind of my top picks here just for general gameplay in the green tree. Now, blue tree will be pretty simple as well. We do start with Precision for the extra crit chance. Hop on over to Extended Might and then pick Piercing for the extra offensive penetration. After that, I would come back out and start picking up some of your slotted stars over here for damage. So the key ones would be Biting Aura for sure. This increases your damage done with area of effect attacks, which would include that explosion, by the way, from your Ice Wall. So that's very important. Same thing with Master at Arms. Since that explosion part of the ability is direct damage, this does get buffed by Master at Arms as well. Now you can see I skipped Thaumaturge, even though Ice Wall is technically, also a damage over time ability. We're not using it in that way, right? We're just using it for the explosion damage, which means Thaumaturge is going to be pretty useless on this particular setup. So I would skip that in this case. You'll be much better off picking up something else like Fighting Finesse. This increases your critical damage and critical healing by up to 10%. And then we did just pick up some extra base spell damage here with Untamed Aggression. So those are the 4 slotted stars. If you have any more points beyond that, you can always come back here for a little bit more damage. Also, Flawless Ritual is good on this build. Very important. This increases your chance to apply those magical status effects. So like Shield, for example, to give us more damage from the Frostbite set, you would want to max this out pretty early. And then you can get War Mage for even more spell damage. Eldritch Insight will give you some more max Magicka. And then here in Staving Death, these are just our defensive stars. Again, really not necessary for most cases when you're grinding. You want to fight easy enemies. Most cases, they're not even going to touch us. They're going to be dead before then. But these will be good just if you need them. Best one here definitely is going to be Preparation. So this increases your damage reduction by 10%. That's a really good benefit for just 20 points. Moving over to Red Tree, a couple of changes here. I would still start probably over here with Boundless Vitality for the extra health, Rejuvenation for some extra recovery, or you could go with Fortified for the extra armor. Then we're going to jump down to Sprinter, come over here, pick up Hasty, and I actually like this one, Celerity, for one of my slotted stars on this build because I'm getting 10% bonus move speed at all times. So if you're really focused on grinding, let's say, champion points as quickly as possible, you're going to want some extra movement speed. And we get a lot from this build. So we have Bird of Prey on the 1-bar setup, and then you get 10% bonus speed in addition from this one. Then you want to work up to Hero's Vigor, and then Siphoning Spells. This might be a little bit of overkill, but it can definitely help. You can get up to 1,500 bonus Magicka per kill with this fully upgraded. So think about that. Plus, if you happen to kill an enemy with your Destruction Staff, your Ice Wall, which you will be doing, that's over 5,000 Magicka back per kill. That's crazy good. Of course, you can pick up some other passives in here if you like as well. Things like Tumbling, Defiance, Tireless Guardian, Fortification. Again, I'll have the entire setup in the written guide, including breakdowns for 300, 600, 900, and 1200 CP, if you want to check that out. Last but not least, we can check out the outfit style if you are curious. And this is actually made up of costume, I believe. Under costumes. Yes, Oblivion Explorer garb. So that has the kind of explorer, treasure hunter look almost. And then combined with that, for the headpiece, got the Colovian fur hood. And weapon, just to complete the outfit, we've got the Frostcaster style on the Ice Staff. All right, everybody, and with that, that's going to wrap up this build update for the Ice Storm Magicka Warden Grind God build for the Elder Scrolls Online. Hope you all enjoyed this video and you found it informative. Of course, if you did, don't forget to crush that like button. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments section below. This is one of our first updated builds for the Deadlands DLC. We have a lot more builds to update. So if you have any favorites, make sure to let me know in the comments section as well. Finally, quick shout out to our channel members right here at HTM who go out of their way each and every month to support the channel. You all are amazing. Big thanks as as always to all of you. If you are not a channel member yet, you can click on that join button down below for more information, including our membership perks like early access to videos at tier 1 and access to additional members only builds and guides at tier 2. And as always, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you're doing well. Stay safe out there, and I will see you around in the next video.